The $700 billion bailout package following angry calls from constituents after the markets plunged on Monday when the House failed to pass it. Congressional leaders told reporters they hope to send legislation to President Bush by the end of the week. The Senate proposals expected to include measures to win the approval of House Republicans, such as tax breaks for businesses and higher government insurance for bank deposits. The vote is scheduled for after sundown in observance of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. House officials also worked on their own changes to the plan Tuesday. These included tax credit for low-income homeowners and an extension of unemployment pay, but it remains unclear whether these changes will be approved by the Senate. As the markets began to recover on Tuesday after Monday's precipitous fall, President Bush, as well as both presidential candidates, urged Congress to take quick action to stabilize the markets. Both Senators Obama and McCain said they would return to Washington for Wednesday's vote. After meeting with Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson and Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke, President Bush warned Tuesday the consequences for the economy would be, quote, painful and lasting unless Congress acted on the bailout plan.
As much as we might wish the situation were different, our country is not facing a choice between government action and the smooth functioning of the free market. We're facing a choice between action and the real prospect of economic hardship for millions of Americans and for the financial security of every American. Congress must act.
To make sense of what's going on with the economy, I'm joined now by veteran journalist and best-selling author William Greider. He's the national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine and the author of several books, including The Soul of Capitalism, Opening Paths to a Moral Economy, and One World, Ready or Not, The Manic Logic of Global Capitalism. His forthcoming book is called Coming Home, America, The Rise and Fall and Redeeming Promise of Our Country. But before we go to William Greider, we're going to turn right now for a moment to Rob Johnson. He was on with us yesterday, the former chief economist of the Senate Banking Committee. He was in Washington yesterday through the negotiations. Rob Johnson, if you can just bring us up to speed, what actually happened and how is it that the Senate will be voting before the House? The House expected to vote tomorrow. 2 days ago, they voted the plan down.
Well, it appears that the Senate has a very strong majority in both parties supporting the bill, as many as 70 votes. In order to make the bill more palatable for the Republicans, Majority Leader Reid appears to be offering various business tax cut possibilities that were covered on the wires last night, and other things, including an increase in the limit on deposit insurance, which small banks favor. Also, among all the business groups, Chamber of Commerce, National Association of Manufacturers Business Roundtable, they put out a call that said, if you don't want a bill, a left-wing bill, then you got to support this right now, because the president's going to have to sign whatever comes to us, and that's because the markets are so fragile. So you've seen a tremendous business lobbying effort, an attempt by the Democratic leadership to pass this bill, not by moving to the left and doing more progressive legislation, but by moving to the right to please the business groups and the Republican voters that would change over. The Senate will go first, and then my understanding is they plan to adjourn, so the House has to pass a bill or take responsibility for the turmoil in the markets that would ensue.
And Rob Johnson, if you could just speak as loud as you can, because there's a lot of static on your cell phone, but were there people in the Senate who are resisting this in the Democratic leadership?
Well, the understanding is that Senator Webb from Virginia is quite unhappy with the bill and may consider expressing that and working to try to make some changes. That was the word that was out last night. It's also known that Senator Dodd and Jack Reed from Rhode Island have expressed concerns about giving Senator Paulson quite so much discretion to allocate $700 billion on a trust-me basis. And while they've worked to improve the bill, they have suggested behind the scenes that they would like to have seen it go further. But at this point, the bill has so much momentum, so many people are fatigued, they want to get out of town, and I think we run the risk of doing some very bad public policy here.
And then the House votes tomorrow.
The House vote would follow the next day, that's correct.
William Greider, you're with us in Washington, D.C. as you hear these latest developments, and of course, developments have been following them. What are your thoughts right now?
Rob is an old friend of mine, and I know he's on the case, but I think he would agree this is a very revealing moment in American democracy. We're seeing the real deformities and power alignments that govern issues like this, particularly the financial system. And I think he's right. My guess would be that the House will fall, will cave, and they'll get their votes. I'm sure right now the captains of industry are pounding the bejesus out of the Republican dissenters, and when it's through, then we'll see. We have, my sense is that we are in this very rare and somewhat dangerous situation for the next 3 months until a new president and Congress are in office, in which, yes, the government has to act, but all of the power centers in politics and finance and business are discredited by these events, which is very unusual. And so we had this moment Monday when, for complicated political reasons, a majority in the House rose up and said no. They were standing, of course, with the broad public, which regards this bailout as a swindle and backwards. Why are you giving all this money to the people who caused this crisis, and taking the money from the public assets of the victims, which is the rest of us?
So what about this, William Greider? What about this, what you call the historic swindle?
Well, it's going to roll forward, I think, and we will see how Secretary Paulson dispenses this money, I would guess rapidly, in the next 3 months. He is a Wall Street guy, a member of the club in esteemed standing. He was CEO at Goldman Sachs. He speaks the language which anyone in the general public can see when they look at what he's told us and what he hasn't told us about how this bailout will work. My fundamental complaint is that they have been sleight of hand to the point of broad deception to the American people, if you listen to the rhetoric of the president and others, in what they're setting out to do here. Even $700 billion will not save all the financial institutions. What we're witnessing is the great deflation of Wall Street, literally, in which it will get smaller, less powerful. Firms will have to merge or fold, and that process is underway, and it's bloody. But he, as a result of that, he can't bail out everybody. He can take a lot of assets off of the balance sheets of crippled and insolvent institutions, but he can't save them all. So my view is that he has now put himself in the role of Grim Reaper for some and Savior for others. And the process in which he chooses those is not exactly transparent to the rest of us. We'll learn later, and we'll hear, I predict, lots of screams and denunciations because he will pick and choose on a plane that somebody's going to lose. That's the banker's side of it. Of course, the other side of it is the one that I think matters most to the country. It certainly matters most to me, which is, what is the government doing while it manages the shrinkage of Wall Street finance to build a floor and stability under the real economy where people live, producers, workers, families? And the answer is not much. And I've argued for some time that both parties in Washington, following the lead of the financiers and the Bush administration, have this backwards. They of course, they have to deal with the bloodied financial system, but their real energy and resources should go directly into the real economy in different ways, which is also contracting or in a recession. And so the challenge is to keep that real economy from unwinding as dramatically as the financial system is unwound. And banking is part of that, to be sure, but the heart of it is demand for products and employment and jobs,